Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and I hope all of you are having a great day because, well, we have a great show planned for you where we will be talking with a regular here on the show, a correspondent, and you know him as Scott Schober. He is the author of Hacked Again, and, this guy does, just day to day, day in and day out, security and all about security. It's very knowledgeable guy, and very happy that he is here on the show, so often to share that knowledge with us. So if you haven't heard from Scott Schober before, you're in for a treat because we have a lot of great topics, and hey, we're going to have those topics in the show notes. So if you want to check any of these out, including source articles, or some of these are indeed YouTube videos that you can check out, we're going to include links to all of those in the show notes over at computeramerica.com. And while you're there, also be sure to check out the social media contest brought to you by Logitech, and be sure to check out the live video stream, which is brought to you by OWC. So with I think with that being said, we're just going to go ahead and jump right into this. So as I said, Scott Schober, he is the president and CEO of Berkeley Veritronics, and also the author of Hacked Again, and of course, Computer America's resident cybersecurity expert. So Scott, welcome back onto Computer America. How you doing? How have you been?
Doing great. Great to be back there, Ben. Thanks.
Our pleasure. Yeah, no, and hey, glad you're doing well, and happy that you could join us because there's been some recent stories that, hey, we haven't even covered yet on the show, and admittedly, we probably should have, considering it came straight from the FBI, but it's one of those things that, I actually saw on the local news, and I thought to myself, how effective is that really going to be? So again, to kind of put that into context, I'm happy you're here. So actually, before we get started with even that, give the people a bit of a background on yourself. How did you get into cybersecurity, and what makes you qualified to speak on this?
Sure, absolutely. Our company, we're 46 years old, Berkeley Veritronics Systems. We've been developing all kinds of wireless test tools that make our phones work, building out the cellular network really around the globe as all the different standards continue to emerge. And all the offshoots of that are a lot of interesting security tools to counter the bad guys. So the more and more that we learned about cell phones, and we're talking over the span since the mid to late 1980s till present, we learned a lot of secrets and backdoors that the bad guys use to exploit the wireless infrastructure there, and certainly that spans into the world of cybersecurity a number of years ago. And I continue to learn more about that, educate people, present, and talk on the topic. And the more I did that, myself and my company became a target, and hence why I wrote the book Hacked Again. And we were constantly, and still are today, being targeted for various means to disrupt our business and stop educating people, as many cybersecurity experts also have. So I guess it's kind of a badge and somewhat of an honor to be targeted, but at the same time it's very disruptive and a pain. But we don't stop, and we try to educate on great mediums and forums such as this show, where we can educate listeners and try to share knowledge that we've learned and have that wonderful exchange, I think. So that kind of gives a little brief background who we are, what we are, but all of it's tied to wireless. That's usually what main focus we have, and we do sell to law enforcement and FBI and DoD and various agencies there.
Right. No, and that is, hey, when you, or not when you, but when hackers started to go after when wireless technology was just kind of out there, I can, kind of vouch for this, that between Wi-Fi, between RFID readers for credit cards and for ATMs, things like that, ATM skimmers. I mean, wireless technology has certainly made things convenient and accessible, but at the same time, it's led to so many ways that people can be, can become vulnerable to hacking and the like. So I guess, you're working on the other side of wireless is convenient, but it's also very unsafe just because it's not directed. It's not, only meant for one device. It's meant for any device in a given area. So,
yeah, well said. And in fact, that's often a point, and we may have even talked about it before, balancing that convenience, because we all love the convenience of, tying into Wi-Fi and accessing the internet versus that of how secure is it. Oftentimes we'll trade one over the other. So we're always trying to balance that out and help people appreciate you could still have a level of convenience, but you still have to think security to protect yourself and your personal information.
Right. So why don't we go ahead and talk about that, kind of wireless, because actually, I take it back. Routers are not wireless. Let's see. Yeah, no, I was thinking modems. Routers are wireless, but routers are also a common target for hackers. And I believe in this case, we're talking about one of the largest router botnets that we've ever seen. And this is why the FBI, I'm sure you could give a more comprehensive background, but the FBI seized a lot of routers that were all tied to one botnet, and of course, they say they want to dismantle it because what the heck is the FBI going to do with this thing? They just want, it out of there. And I guess they're saying the best way to get rid of it is to simply turn off and turn it back on, thereby breaking the constant connection it currently has, and then, it won't be able to reestablish the connection after the fact. Talk about why the FBI is, again, a law enforcement agency, essentially playing, Geek Squad here. Why is law enforcement telling us to turn it off and turn it back on again?
It's a great question, and that's kind of what I read the headlines first the other day. I said, what is going on here? I think, number one, it's because the magnitude of the sheer number of people that they believe have been infected, their routers with this malware. It's estimates well over 500,000 routers that they know so far that have been affected, with the possibility that there's a lot more. Most of these routers are what I would call more consumer level or small business level. So it's not your Fortune 500 companies per se, but your small businesses, which make up 80-85% of the businesses throughout the United States. So that in itself is pretty staggering. Again, it's got its roots, they believe, clearly back to Russia, where they believe that this malware was authored and originated, again, by analyzing the code of the malware, which looks like a lot of other code very, very similar. And they've even narrowed it down to the groups. There's a couple different groups that have got all these different crazy names, and one that we've heard many a times is Fancy Bear and a couple others. Excuse me.
It always amuses me that they come up with these names, and the only connection I can think to Fancy Bear, and this is kind of off topic, but the only connection is that they do have Russian origins, and let's face it, the Russian bears on the unicycles and things like that. I mean, there's a connection there, right? Like, how did these things get named? Exactly. Is it just whoever coins a term and it just catches?
I think so. It's like a silly pet name, and then it catches on, and then they kind of say, hey, that's the group that basically the coders, the hackers that are behind it. And these are serious coders. They're not just kids in the basement in their pajamas there.
Right.
They're typically nation state sponsored, and they're putting out some serious code that could be destructive. And I think the thing that scares me is when you think about a home office router or a small office router is, if you have malware on there, ultimately what can they do? They could really collect any type of personal information that's going through that conduit. So if you're going out on the internet and doing your banking or trading stocks or Bitcoin or whatever you're doing, and there's a level of confidential nature behind it and you believe it's safe, guess what? It's probably not that safe, and somebody's intercepting it. And that's really the crux of this, I think, and the scary part.
So to be clear, we have talked about VPNs here on the show, virtual private networks. They essentially give you, or they mask your location. They send you through a couple of different networks, before you reach your destination. In some ways, kind of giving you a more obscure, opaque connection to your source. Would VPNs or any other, let's say, malware or malware protection on your computer or a VPN on your computer, would any of that really kind of matter if your router is infected? I mean, how kind of low level does a router, kind of affect your traffic?
Well, I guess it's low level enough that it could actually cause some havoc. And I guess in this particular case, it's kind of a unique warning. I've never, in all the years, heard of, especially FBI in conjunction with the Department of Homeland Security, to urge everyone on a national level to reset the router.
Right.
And part of it has to do with if you dig into the more technical level, there's actually 3 stages of this malware that gets placed on the actual router. By resetting the router, it stops at kind of at stage 1, so it can't get any further and be used as kind of an IoT bot to start collecting personal information and remoting that to someone else. So the advice is sound. It just seems almost pathetically simple and crazy that they put out that level of warning. And I think a big part of it too, we have to realize, how does the malware get there? Back up to cybersecurity basic 101.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times people buy a small office or home router and they set it up because they're so excited. They're not configuring it and taking off the admin password and setting up any type of security protocol like WPA2 or anything else. They just turn it on and go with the basics. And often that's what's being exploited. And probably as this story unfolds, we're going to find that these are people that just plugged in their home office router and don't have a long password on there that's secure. So another part of their bulletin was, hey guys, while you're resetting your router, take the time to actually configure it with some security and put a good, long, strong password on there. Change your password, and that way, in the event that somebody did get something, they can't go any further with it.
I have seen people who, and way back at the beginning, convenience versus the idea of. Let's see, it was convenience versus the idea of security, and for convenience sake, I have seen people go back and explicitly change username to admin and password as password, because that's what their first router was back in 1987, and hey, that, or whatever modem, and it's people are creatures of habit. I will say, though, that we have been testing a lot of routers here, mainly from Netgear, some from Linksys, things like that. And just out of the box, I don't know how often people actually change out their routers, but new routers actually come with decent passwords. They're usually two words followed by 3 numbers, and by default. And default routers, they're getting better, but I guess that doesn't account for, as the FBI was saying, 500,000 routers that, maybe from, 2010 or even sooner.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. I recently was helping somebody put in more of a commercial grade a router, and I noticed it had a big bright yellow sticker on it. This is the default password that comes with it. Make sure you change this to a long string. Look, they actually had some common sense advice for somebody that knew nothing setting up. I said, good, thank you. People are starting to hear it and learn it and understand that there are risks and things out there, so they got to step it up. And most of these routers are just the names you mentioned. They're the common ones, the Linksys, the Netgear, the very common ones that you're going to go maybe into Best Buy or another store to get, and you get a good deal on it. It does have encryption and a lot of other things on it. But again, if you don't take that step to secure it, it's the weakest link, and that's where it will be exploited.
Do you think that by the FBI giving out this warning, do you think people are actually going to set up and take notice? Because again, this was reported on the local news. We're talking about here on our program. I'm sure the FBI has a Twitter account that they put on or something. I mean, you can get the word out, but even something as simple as turning it off, waiting 30 seconds, and turning it back on. Do you think that this is something we can conceivably say, will actually work, or do you think that it's just like so many other things, the solution is simple. The implementation just is never there.
Well, I guess part of the story, if you dig a little deeper below the headlines and the sensationalism with this, the other thing was that what was controlling this was really through a specific domain that was registered that these Russian hackers had.
Right.
And the FBI was able to take over that site and take the code and stuff off there, so it couldn't be used as a conduit anymore. So theoretically, since they've taken control of it, it should limit or stop it. However, everybody knows you could just set up another domain for 99 cents and start another campaign. So they're smart and they're trying to handle it both ways, I think, to minimize the damage. But to your point, do you think that the average mom and pop is going to know how to reset their router or take this advice? Probably not. I'm guessing 10-15% of the people that read the headlines will react to it because they're a little more security minded, or they've been compromised before, and they're listening to your show hopefully now and saying, hey, I probably should just roll up my sleeves and take 10 minutes, not just to reset it, but let me put in a secure password, make sure the encryption's set, and so on and so forth. Well, that's just the way security is, unfortunately. But the more people that hear about it, the better chance to minimize the damage.
Right, and you can see here in the article that you linked, and it's also in the show notes. But rebooting interrupts the malware. If present, it will then try to reconnect, allowing the FBI to record the IP address and stop it. So I guess any IP address that is trying to reconnect to to the domain they have here, the FBI is just kind of swatting it down as it tries to reconnect. So, they have a pretty sound plan, and like you said, they do have control of it. The other interesting part is the fact that it is, or at least what they believe to be, Russian intelligence. I mean, it's not often, and don't get me wrong. I mean, we've had a lot of ex-special forces and things like that here on the show. It's not often we get to see the cyber warfare that happens every single day actually kind of make it to the light, because it all happens behind the scenes. So that's another kind of interesting aspect, is that this happens all the time. It's just different that we are kind of part of it this time.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. When it kind of migrates over to that small business consumer space, it's a little different. You think about these government agencies, they've got things in place. They've got monitoring. They're spending billions of dollars to combat cyber warfare every single day. The mom and pop flower shop down the road probably isn't that worried about that. They're worried about getting their delivery of flowers and so on and so forth. So it's gone mainstream now, and we're all part of the problem and part of the solution at the same time.
Right. So, all right. So we're done with that. If people wanted to, of course, kind of want to read up on that, again, they're in the show notes, and you can check that out there. Very, very cool stuff. And yeah, so I think we're going to go ahead and move on to the next topic you have here. And so I watched some of the video, poked through it in preparation for the show. I'm sure I didn't do the best job, but Scott, you like I said, you've been in the security arena for like 40 years with Berkeley Veritonic Systems. You, of course, are an advocate. Lately, you have really been trying to get the word out and doing a great job of just common threats and things like that. And now you're doing something that I've seen a couple of other, or at least we've had on the show, a couple of other cybersecurity, companies are doing, and that's the idea of making comprehensive lists, doing surveys, things like that. Just getting hard data out there, because I don't know what it is about you security guys, but you love hard data. So.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you can talk about the process of setting this up and what you're trying to accomplish, but the 2018 Cybersecurity 500 list at the Cyber Investing Summit. So talk about this, talk about your role, and what all this is about.
Yeah, this is kind of exciting because if anybody wants to, they can go to cybersecurityventures.com is the main URL. And when they go there, this is a centralized spot now that's everything cybersecurity. So, of course, myself, I'm naturally gravitated toward that. And what they've done is they've launched an online magazine called Cybercrime Magazine, and I was brought into this mix to provide more, commentate and articles and networking and so forth, and advise. And it's with the likes of these top cybersecurity companies. So that what they've done is hard and fast research over the past few months, and they've put together a list of the top 500 cybersecurity companies, and they have a whole bunch of metrics, and it goes on the website, it tells you all the metrics that goes into the list, but it's pretty impressive research that's behind this, and they've been reporting cybersecurity ventures and providing reports to the industry for a number of years now. So they have tons and tons of data and metrics, and they're at the cutting edge of cybersecurity. So I'm honored to join the team there and be part of it, and learning a ton of things along the way. And they've got some different events throughout the year. This one event that just happened this month, in fact, was in New York City, in Manhattan, the Cyber Investing Summit, and I was invited there to provide about 15 minutes of opening comments about the community of cybersecurity and how important investing into the cybersecurity infrastructure and the companies is. And it was certainly a very exciting event there, and that's where I was able to announce these top 500 companies on the annual list that made the list there. And you can see it on the website there too.
Yeah. So and so a couple of things. Obviously, the first one, when I heard the term Cyber Investing Summit, I immediately, my mind went to cryptocurrency, because when you talk about things like that. But what you kind of mentioned was the idea of investing in, infrastructure and protection and things like that. I mean, cyber investing, is it about cryptocurrency, or is it about, just kind of where technology funding kind of needs to go for businesses to develop?
You're certainly right, and there is a certain part of it that's tied in with the ICOs and the cryptocurrencies and things like that, because it's a hot space. There's a lot of money there. But at the same time, there's a lot of funds that are traded actually on Wall Street. Pure Funds is one of them, where it's really a compilation of top cybersecurity companies that investors can go to. So if you think about it, imagine you're an investor and you hear about the latest hack and breach. Well, what companies are probably going to get a lot of revenue of that post-breach? Most likely it's a cybersecurity company, because that's where the experts are brought in to do the analysis and roll their sleeves up and really clean up the mess. And that's where tons of money are being invested by these huge Fortune 500 companies are in these cybersecurity companies. Companies such as the Hershevik Group, I think they're number one on the list there, are doing amazing stuff. And we're familiar with Robert Hershevik on Shark Tank, but he's got an incredible cybersecurity company that can go in there and provide services when there's major breaches and help minimize the damage, keep the brand strong, and do a lot of things there. So I think when people look at the list and they start to analyze and understand the companies, they see the different niche areas that these companies provide education and solutions and services, and that's what it's all about. It's a nice central spot to connect everybody together.
So, and talk about the list, and that you kind of mentioned the top 500, the cybersecurity 500 list. I mean, what did it take to kind of get on there? Is it all about people who are innovative in the field? Is it all about people who are kind of giving the best traditional services? I mean, what really makes the company stand out? Because you'd think, or at least you'd hope, a lot of companies are kind of really good at doing cybersecurity. So what was kind of the list comprised of?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's actually a combination of about 20 different metrics, and I'll send you a link over after this if you want.
Sure.
And it's of course it has to do with revenue and head count, but it also has to do with more, as you point out, innovation. Coming up with unique ways to capture the bad guys, to fight back, coming up with innovative solutions and advanced threat detection tools. A lot of it also is simulation. Getting companies to get proper hygiene. A company, KnowBe4 is on the list there toward the top. They've got some incredible things that help with phishing attacks, simulated phishing attacks. So you can hire this company, and in the background, they can target your employees to test how cyber savvy are they? How do they respond to a phishing attack. Will they click on it? What percentage of the people click on it? And then they'll come in and actually educate and say, here's why you shouldn't have clicked on it. Here's what you could do to prevent it from happening again. And they've got statistics that show when people go through this training, it actually reduces their chances of falling for a hacker targeting them, and it educates them, kind of empowers them. So, and I see you're scrolling through the list there. You could see some pretty big name companies now on that list. And I think for me what was kind of interesting is notice how it's not just private sector anymore. You're starting to also see some government agencies and prime contractors for the government that are really building a strong cyber presence. And a lot of these companies are our customers, so for us it's great.
Yeah, no, and you're right. I mean, I kind of, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that the likes of Microsoft, one that did kind of surprise me was, even though we hear about them all the time, and sometimes it's, Amazon Web Services has been DDoSed, or Amazon Web Services has been compromised, or, someone found an unprotected trove of, an unprotected database or a non-protected database on Amazon Web Services. Like, we hear about Amazon Web Services, we hear about Microsoft and the Azure cloud. We hear all about, Cisco and routers and things like that getting compromised. Even though they're getting compromised, they still score very highly on your, on your list. And I guess that's a testament to, even though we may hear about them all the time, just because they're targeted 1,000 times and they may stop at once doesn't mean that they're not doing very impressive things, 999 times out of 1,000. Is that kind of what I'm gathering here?
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's kind of ironic. I look at myself. I'm educating people, hopefully educating people in the world of cybersecurity, yet our company was compromised and hacked. In fact, just about every company is compromised and hacked. It's not that the fact that happened, you throw the towel in. It's what do you do about it? Now you roll up your sleeves and you're determined to fight back and strengthen your defenses. And that's what a lot of these companies on here actually have had to do, because they become targets as well.
Yeah, no, I completely believe it. And, there are some companies on here. I honestly, I might use this list as kind of a, hey, come on the show and talk about your products. Like F-Secure, I haven't heard news from them in forever, but man, glad to see that they're that they're still out there making waves. And hey, McAfee. So no, it's also a great list. And I mean, just talk about the summit a little bit more. We're about to head off to break here in about 2 or 3 minutes, so we'll finish the summit and then we'll come back with some other things. But I mean, just talk about the summit, and was it something that because going to the website here, sorry for sounding all over the place, but going to the website here, you're talking to the professionals and the community that's going to be in charge of, protecting data and loss and things like that. And then at the same time, you see headlines such as cybercrime damages to reach $6 trillion by 2021. They're already projecting a lot of damages and lost, time, energy, what have you. I mean, just how is the cybersecurity community kind of doing lately? Are you guys, are they grasping for any eligible candidate? Are they, waiting for new technology? How is the community?
Well, community suffers strongly in the standpoint of jobs. They're dying for people. Training, high-tech, innovative jobs are readily available with great salaries, and I encourage people that are looking for a career, not just now but in the future, where they can be challenged and do well. I can tell them, please look at cybersecurity. And there's some great stuff on Cybersecurity Ventures research there that they could download on all these jobs that are available, and information and background and skill sets and things that you need. And a lot of statistics that are put together. The founder is Steve Morgan, and he's got a wealth of knowledge. He's been writing for years, expert in the industry. And if anybody wants to learn the bigger picture, it's a great resource to go to. If you want to find books, if you want to look at movies on cybersecurity, you name it, it's the place to go for top list. But all tied closely to cybersecurity. A lot of great interviews too, and even to your point on the summit, I had the privilege of interviewing David DeWalt, who was the CEO at FireEye and several other companies. He's got a half dozen companies now.
And Scott, I'm going to stop you right there. Everyone, the music means we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. More Scott Schober and more Computer America right after this. Everyone, stay tuned.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 2 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. And we are talking with Mr. Scott Schober, Berkeley Veritronics, and of course, author of Hacked Again. If you want to read his personal account of how he was compromised and how he dealt with it and the after effect. And yeah, you know, it's a definitely great book. We actually have one here at the office, and yeah, hey, there you go. So also, by the way, if you missed any part of today's interview and you want to go back and check it out, feel free, wherever podcasts are heard, be that iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, we got you covered. It's just today's show in its entirety in podcast form, so don't worry. All right. So Scott, sorry to cut you off there, but let's wrap up the conference real quick. You mentioned that you were actually talking, I believe, with the CEO of FireEye. If you could just finish up that thought real quick.
Yeah. The David DeWalt, the former CEO of FireEye, and got to chat with him a little bit, introduce him, and he had a great keynote, and it was interesting to hear where he sees we are now, where the pulse of the future is going. And a lot of the discussion, even throughout the day, interestingly enough, was IoT. A lot of people are very concerned with IoT and hacks and threats, which kind of align nicely even what we were kind of talking about in the beginning with the FBI and the routers. But that going forward, I think, is going to be a prevailing problem that people need to think about. I was even meeting earlier today with a company, and they went to the IoT show and were telling me all about, and this was out in Santa Clara, how big the industry is growing, and everybody's dumping a ton of money into IoT and trying to have the next great sensor that they could plug into the house, and you name it. So I think the threats are going to continue, and we have to be careful that we don't get ahead of ourselves and don't think about security as always.
So yeah, and here's one that we actually here's something that I actually brought up yesterday on the program, and I kind of want your thought on it, because obviously, hey, this is exactly what I was talking about. Was that IoT, everything's connected to the internet, everything has sensors, everything can be to an extent hacked. That is something that we are quickly heading to, and one of the most I guess sensitive issues when it comes to Internet of Things because, hacking a light bulb, can be an intrusion and you can get to more sensitive things. But, if your light bulb's compromised, they may, if they're able to upload bad firmware, maybe be able to burn it out or, make your lights flicker, turn colors, what have you. Not that big a deal. But recently, I believe it was Schlage, I'm sure, whatever. Their front doors, they have connected front door locks, deadbolts, and they, let's see, I think Amazon is able to unlock and lock them. Google Assistant is now able to lock them, and Siri is now able to lock them, but the latter two are not able to unlock them. Either way, this is, I think, the first time a lot of people consider, do I want the ability for someone across the world, across the country, or even right outside my door to be able to unlock it with their cell phone? And, the point that I was kind of trying to make yesterday was that these Internet of Things devices can be as secure as you want. I mean, you could spend, you could have AES 256 encryption. It could take, 14 years to crack the password and then another year to, kind of sniff packets and get everything, get it all hunky-dory. And then eventually, 15 years later, they can unlock your front door. Like, there's that. And then there's always the handy-dandy rock or brick that they can throw through your window and open the window just like that. So I guess my question is, the Internet of Things, it's coming. It's certainly a possibility. Obviously ignoring any kind of glaring mass security, problems, which we have had in the past. How concerned should we be about, not just our lights, but soon to be our doors, our major appliances? How concerned should we be?
I think very concerned. I try to walk that fine line. Again, I love innovation in technology. I love wireless, but I'm security-minded. Do I have a Nest thermostat? Yes. Do I have a wireless router? Sure. Do I have Philips Hue colored light bulbs? Sure, they're cool. They're fun. Mm-hmm. Do I have a lot of wireless stuff? Absolutely. But at the same time, I try to balance it and make sure that I do have strong passwords on it, that I understand how far somebody can get. Am I going to have a Bluetooth door lock on my front home? No, because there's known hacks for it. Bluetooth is somewhat secure, but not that secure. Am I going to leave the keys hanging outside my house? That's what it's tantamount to, because there's known ways to break and compromise these things. So I try to balance it out. And I think listeners need to do the same thing, too. They need to think about, what are you protecting? That's what's important. You don't want to have somebody to be able to just walk in your front door, or the Amazon key. You can even leave packages in your trunk. Personally, cool concept. Would I do it? No way ever. I don't want somebody crawling around in my trunk and then having access, putting the back seats down and taking it to the next step, planting a bug or a camera or stealing something. Or I'm paranoid, though. I've been compromised and hacked. I've had cars stolen. I've had homes broken into. So am I a nut and paranoid with cameras and everything else? Absolutely. So maybe I'm not the best gauge there, but I think the listeners have to just use common sense and say, do I really need to wave my phone in front of the door to unlock the door? Or am I that lazy that I can't just turn the key? I don't know.
One thing I did like about the idea was, even if people, because a lot of these features that we talk about, they're subject to any other market force that's out there, including, well, if people are not comfortable with the idea, they won't buy it because, hey, if it fails to keep your home safe, then why would you ever buy it in the first place? One thing I do like is the idea that you can at least, even this does, now that I'm thinking about it, offer some level of, leaving yourself open, but you could at least put a sensor in there that tells you if your front door is locked or unlocked. And, while it won't be able to, physically lock or unlock it for you, at least having that little bit of information, that's something the Internet of Things is also good at. It's just kind of giving you, giving you updates, giving you data. And I think that regardless of what happens, these things are here to stay, and it's only going to kind of get worse. And that seems to be the feeling that you got from your summit as well.
Absolutely, and some of the stats I was even sharing, you mentioned one earlier, about $6 trillion in cybercrime. It's hard for us to even fathom numbers like that, but there's a ton of research and calculations that go into that give us actually a very credible number that kind of makes you scared. But at the same time, I think companies that are in this industry, it's also very promising because they say, wow, this is where I want to invest in my future to fight this, and to invest in companies that are actually building up technologies to fight back and to beat the bad guys. So it kind of can be a little bit empowering and exciting at the same time for many people in the industry.
Right, exactly. So, all right, so Summit, and again, a couple of videos that you have linked, we have those included in the show notes. They'll be up after the show, and you could definitely go check those out as well. Now, we have plenty of time to get into some of these other topics, and I don't think I can actually play this on the air. Let's see if I can. No, I think it's going to be... Yeah, no, it's all silent. But it's at the Cyber Investing Summit, and you link to a part at about 6 minutes in. And so this is titled, Who is Human and Who is Robot? Google using subvocals in their AI. Everyone who was watching the show maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago when Google had their I.O. conference, they showed off the idea that you can schedule appointments, but it's not just some fancy AI filling out forms online. It's an AI using actual speech and sounding very, very convincing to, interact with a human. It's something that I think is the natural progression, because you can't expect everyone to have an online form to fill out. You need to talk to a person at some point. And, it was a lot of fun, but also, kind of uncanny valley creepy-esque. I'm hoping that I'm, talking about the same thing here. Talk about this, who is human and who is robot, and why Google is using subvocals in their AI.
Yeah, no, you're dead on. This Google Assistant here, they're calling it Google Duplex, I guess, from the Google's I.O. conference a couple of weeks back there, and they demoed it. And there's been a few articles and different people talking and some videos. I got a couple of the clips that I played when I presented at the Cyber Investing Summit for the audience to hear and try to figure out who was the robot versus who was the actual human. And it's fascinating. I've even tricked my family and a couple other people. I said, hey, take a listen. Who's real and who's the robot? A lot of people could not tell. And the reason is, as I dug in more and more and listened again and again, it's because of those subvocals. And those are things, the natural things, as you or I are talking now, we're going to say and
right.
And in conversation back and forth, those little nuances are slipped in. And when an AI robot is talking, you stinking can't tell the difference, and it makes you kind of send shivers up your spine. And what they've done is they called for, I think, a haircut appointment on one of them. Another was calling a Chinese food store and ordering and setting up a party. Fascinating. And you sit back laughing when you realize the other person answering the phone has no clue that they're just talking to an AI robot. So it's definitely the future, and it's going to be used for things like that, scheduling appointments and other things that are a little more mundane, that you could talk to your Echo or your whatever device at home, your assistant, and it will go out and routinely call and take care of appointments and scheduling and a whole bunch of other things.
So there's a couple things there. The first one are, the subvocals. You hit upon it, where I did watch the one where they were scheduling the hair appointment, and a lot of the technology that they were showing off was not very intuitive for, I guess, the average person, where you think about how complex this AI would have to be if you say, schedule me a hair appointment at, on Tuesday at around 11 o'clock. You are giving a computer a lot of open-ended variables that it would have to solve for itself, including 11's not available, is 10:30 or is 12:30 okay? And it has to make that decision by itself. Also, do you want a haircut or do you want more? And I know people that would kind of freeze on the spot and go, I'm not sure, let me check. The AI didn't do that. And then the subvocals, everyone at the conference, and mostly it was developers, so they know just how impressive it was. When she said, "Hold on a moment," and the AI went, just that very simple, they all laughed. Everyone in the audience laughed because it was something so small, but it shows an understanding by the computer that it didn't need a direct response, but it did need some kind of indication that it understood, hold on a moment. So, I mean, I can understand where people were losing the fight between, discerning who's the person and who's the robot. But do you think that that's okay? I mean, going forward, I think Google said that when they do bring this out to market, they're going to make the digital assistants announce themselves saying, "Hello, this is Google Duplex," or "Hello, this is a digital assistant," or a virtual assistant, whatever. Do you think that's necessary? Do you think that AI should kind of identify itself as not a real person?
I think it would be beneficial because I think there's a lot of people out there that have no stinking clue. They're going to be blown away, and they'll be giving away information or doing things. In my mind, I started to ask myself, what would happen if one digital assistant called and another digital assistant answered? And now you've got two robots talking and doing things, scheduling appointments or moving money or making travel plans for people. And again, this is just at the infant stage, but I think what's most powerful is it helps us to appreciate how fast AI is and how fast this machine learning is going to happen over the next few years. We're talking about it, laughing about it now. There are companies that are spending billions of dollars implementing this into their infrastructure for instead of all the callers in India, they're going to be Google Assistants and other technology that's applying AI and machine learning to making practical phone calls and providing information and updates. It's scary times, but for me, very exciting times.
I said it on the show. I recently had to call my cable company, and I still can't identify them, even though this is a good story, because they can go back and find all the bad stories and identify them. But I had to call them, and I had to deal with the digital assistant phone tree-esque kind of system. And normally, they make me mad to no end. They are cumbersome. You have to know how to speak to them to get anywhere, and otherwise you're just saying operator 100 times until you finally get a person. I would say about 6 months ago was the first time I called one and said, wow, this thing understood me and was able to actually help me. Like, did everything from resetting my modem, to reprovisioning my modem, was there to check my connection, was check outages. I mean, this thing was really fantastic. And again, I didn't have to tie up a person for half an hour while I was doing this. It was all automated. If I'm impressed now, then I can't imagine in 5 years when it's not going to make sense for a person to answer the phone at a lot of companies.
Yeah, that's true. It's going to displace a lot of jobs, perhaps. Maybe it'll make it more efficient, and at the same time, there's going to be some really funny screw-ups that we're going to be hearing about.
Yeah, I can't wait for those either. But so digital assistant, they're great, and folks, if you haven't checked out, especially the Google examples, definitely go check those out. So, all right, so there's that one. Let's go ahead and move on to this one. So. Let's see. I mean, he was a major part of the show for a long time here on the program, Charles Tendell, and he received a lot of media attention, for better or worse, for the idea of starting up a service. I believe it was like hire a hacker or something like that, where he himself was a gray hat hacker turned white hat hacker. And what that means was he was kind of, and he turned into the good guy. And then he started a service. Bad guy, good guy. And then he started a service where he pretty much explicitly said, if you need a hacker, and I don't think he ever truly marketed as such, but he never shot down the idea, was if you want to check if your spouse is cheating on you and you want to check her emails, hey, check this out. You know, while definitely not legal in a lot of cases, you know, hiring someone else to do it and hacking back, especially if you've been compromised before and you want to find out who did it, you have this topic here about, you know, hacking back, you know, fighting fire with fire. We've seen it before. It's received a lot of scrutiny, and people are generally, you know, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Talk about what you kind of came up with this and how you feel about hacking back, because you deal with hackers all the time. As much as you'd like to get back at them, you know, I don't think you go cyber Rambo on them, do you?
No, I have not. I can say I've gone down the path in my investigation to isolate and find out who was behind some of the specific targeting to me. And I've learned one thing: you probably don't want to go after those guys because they will make your life miserable. I have a few colleagues that have attempted to hack back, and they've paid the price dearly, and not just monetary sense, but these hackers will publish things to the hacking community that will then together collectively go hack and see how much damage they can cause on an individual or on a company, and it can be devastating. It could knock you out of business. It's knocked one professional I know, a cybersecurity professional. He had to leave his profession, which was educating people and speaking, because it got so bad, and that's not good. And you don't want to take the law into your own hands. There's a lot more to things than we realize. And I thought it was interesting that one article, I think I sent the link there, many of us, if you're old enough, remember the movie War Games, which was kind of really a key time period where they were fighting back and cyber war and things that people never really thought was even possible came into play. And now we're seeing that's a reality now. There are companies, as you mentioned there, that will gladly take your money and provide a DDoS attack to your competitor or take someone offline or make their life miserable. So do I stand behind it and think that it makes sense? No, I don't condone it, but I do understand why people do it out of frustration. I was tempted a few times when our website was down and people are DDoSing us. I was thinking, geez, I do a little research and find the origin of this, I could make their life miserable. Let's have some fun. But I didn't go that far, and I think a lot of people realize that you don't want to cross the line. It's wrong. You're bad at them.
They use techniques that are purposely deceptive, and the minute that you start to do it, I mean, I think the bigger part of this, and this is something I believe you explored in your book, is that, you know, even if you find them, and unless they're like literally in front of you and you can lay hands on them, you're probably never going to reach a satisfying resolution to your problem. Like if they take down your network for, I don't know, a week, or if they delete your website and you have to rebuild it from scratch, I mean, you're never going to get monetary damages out of them. You're never going to get them to do the work for you. You're never going to be able to get them to go back in time. It's just like, it feels like the right thing to do because you've been hurt and you want to retaliate, but I just don't feel like there's much point in it other than it's just, you know, kind of our natural instinct to do so, I guess.
Yeah. No, you're right. Good point.
Yep. So, all right. So there's that one, folks. If you want to be a hacker, please go to school for it and do it for a living. And hey, make a lot of money doing it because hey, that's the best way to stick it back to them is to fight them, for good. So there's that. This next one, the only Joker I know, the playing card and Heath Ledger's Joker. I'm sure there are other Jokers out there. Not Harrison Ford, Hamilton, whatever. But anyway, so there's Jokers, but I don't think you're talking about this Joker. Will the real Joker stash come forward? So I'll be honest, Scott, we have like 4 minutes left. If you just want to kind of broad strokes this one for us, what is Krebs talking about on this one?
I think Brian Krebs did a nice piece on this, a nice investigative piece, which he always does, but he dug in deep here. And really what it is a scam artist that are pretending to be another scam artist, basically. And this was a Pakistani website designer there, I guess, and they impersonated other sites that had posted stolen credit cards and credentials, and they were selling them, and people would be duped in and saying, hey, for 100 bitcoins or 200 bitcoins, you can get this list of hot stolen credit cards. They were pretending to be another site that had it, and basically the scam was they would get your bitcoins and say, hey, sorry, it's not $100 in bitcoins, it's $200 in bitcoins. You'd send another $100 in bitcoins, and they would disappear. So it was a total scam of a scammer site. Which is rather creative, I guess. You got to give them that. And they would claim that they had stashes. The Joker stash typically steals actively for known retail channels, as mentioned in the article there, Hilton and Lord & Taylor, a lot of known retail establishments, credit cards, and they sell them online, and you could buy them with bitcoins to stay anonymous, and then you can burn your own fresh cards and go shopping on other people's nickel.
Right. It's very, very, I guess, kind of interesting, and I guess ties into our previous article where, hacking the hackers back, scamming the scammers. Is it okay? And it's hard to work up sympathy for these folks because, ill-gotten gains are ill-gotten gains. But I guess this also speaks to kind of the lawlessness of this space. So.
The Wild West.
Yeah. So and hey, so we'll have to see about that. And honestly, in the next couple of weeks here, I'm going to be working on an article. Some more hard hitting journalism that I usually dig into. But I kind of want to give you a heads up, and everyone else on the show. A couple of months ago, like 2 or 3 months ago, I did a piece concerning Kaspersky Labs and Russian hacking and the U.S. government, and some kind of favoritism where they were excluding, Kaspersky from government contracts, really based on, kind of nothing. And even I started to doubt myself as, and by the way, completely different topic, but even I started to doubt myself as the FBI, Homeland Security, CIA, any other 3-letter organization came up and said, Kaspersky cannot be trusted. And the entire time, and I kind of wanted your feeling, not about, the research that I still have to do, but just in your, kind of, just to your memory, Kaspersky Labs, have you ever heard of anything, kind of bad? Have they ever, been the point of entry for, any kind of government-sponsored malware, something like that? I mean, it just seems so weird to me that one of the most trusted for like 20 years on malware and malware protection, Kaspersky Labs did a lot of great work. It seemed out of the blue that they've been blacklisted by a lot of organizations and a lot of companies.
Yeah, I think the allegations started within one of the DoD agencies that had a suspicion or some thought of that there was a tie back to some of the Russian groups, Russian hacking groups, such as we talked about earlier. These things were alleged. I don't think there's been proof. I can say that Kaspersky, he's a colleague of mine. We've corresponded in the past. Do I think he's behind any of these evil things? No, he's running a business. He's a smart guy. He's a researcher. He's done tons of things to the industry. Does it seem very coincidental or tempting, one could say, that somebody in a company that provides malware and virus checking software create bugs and viruses and malware and put it out there so they could sell more software?
Yeah,
sure, but I could make a blanket statement of all companies, a Norton, a Symantec, a McAfee, you name it, that you could suppose that is possible to happen. And I have often wondered what a interesting business model. But do I think they do it? I don't think so.
Yeah. And again, this is something we're going to explore in the future. And by the way, I've thought the exact same thing where you do the free scans and they come up with 8,000 bugs. Yeah, I thought that too. But everyone, music means that we're just about done here for the day. And I want to thank you, Scott, for coming on the show. And if people want to find out more about you, where can they go?
They could certainly go to my company's website for wireless threat detection tools. It's B as in boy, V as in Victor, and then systems spelled out plural, or hacking information on my website, Scott Schober, SCHOBER.com, or
all right.
on Twitter, LinkedIn, and all the others too.
All right, and we'll have links to all of that. And folks, until next time, thank you for tuning in to Computer America. And be sure to tune in tomorrow. Let's see if we get this right, when we talk to a company called OneSpan. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And Scott, until next month, everyone else, thank you for tuning in. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Stay safe.